Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lopez, head of the Innovation Lab at Capital One, and I'm super excited to be with you on the second day of the Women in Product Conference. I'm a proud product manager, entrepreneur, innovator, crafter, home chef, Latina, and most importantly, a proud maker. I've been a product manager for years, but when I talk about what I do for a living, or rather what I do with my life, I say I make. I make software, I make hardware, I make services, I make businesses, I make teams, I make breakfast, I make interior designs, I make essays and articles, and sometimes I make messes, and I always make solutions. I think the day I became a product manager was when I realized that everything we encounter around us was made by someone. Wherever you are, stop, look around, let that sink in. Everything you touch, everything you encounter, everything you experience was made by someone or a group of people. When I really let that sink in, when I let that sink in, that feeling that making grants us, I feel so privileged. I also feel privileged to get to talk to you today, to talk to you about rediscovering your power as a maker. And if you, like me over these last 2 years, have been hit really hard, maybe you're in need of rediscovering that power. Maybe you're a little confused about your power and your purpose as a product manager. I know I have been. So I want to also take time to think about how you restore yourself, how you allow yourself to be inspired, creative, and full of innovation potential so you can in turn use that to make. And I promise I will get us back to Love is Blind because I know that is why you are here and you're trying to figure out how the heck that relates to product management. It does. I will get there. Don't worry. But to start, I like to talk about language. I like to be as clear as I can be with language. And having run an innovation lab for some time now, I recognize that when I talk about innovation, which is part of my craft, I often understand that other folks don't know what I mean by that word, particularly my definition of innovation. So here's my definition. Innovation is the intersection of two or more disparate things that come together, and when they combine, they make a spark. And that spark allows you to see the world differently in some way. Now, that spark does not need to be the result of some crazy scientific feat. It can just be a mashup of unlikely things coming together. But when they do come together, you see the world in a new way. I think art often helps us understand that magic of innovation really well. And I think an epitome of this is the theater show Hamilton. Hamilton is that unexpected spark. Our founding fathers, the immigrant story struggle, and hip hop all woven together to tell Alexander Hamilton's story and the story of founding this nation. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it because it is that unexpected spark between those unexpected things which have transformed the theater world and any viewer that has seen it forever. Innovation can come from anyone at any time, inspired by anything. In our world of product management and technology, there is a trope that I really dislike, and it goes something like this. There are two dudes in a garage, or two dudes in Silicon Valley, or two dudes at South by Southwest, and they get to innovate. They get to bring to life life-changing ideas. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Firstly, we do not need two dudes. Secondly, that story has been written and told countless times. I am far more excited about what you all will do. What creative spark will come with you here at Women in Product with the experiences and passion that you have? What is required of that is your story. It's your passions, it's your curiosities, your experiences that fill your creative well. Because if intersection is the intersection, or innovation rather, is the intersection of two or more disparate things, one of which is often the problem you're trying to solve, the other is, well, I don't know. And that's the thing. I don't know what that other thing will be. All I know is that when I'm confronted with having to solve a problem, the first place I turn to make that spark is my creative well. And the act of sparking, and yes, I call it the act of sparking, can be really hard or it can be easy if you view replenishing your well as a creative lifelong pursuit rather than a quick fix to try to solve a problem. And after working in product for years and advising many leaders and executives and PMs about their problems, I've come to recognize that very few people have an actual practice of personal creative investment. So today I want to talk to you about nourishing your creative well from at all times so you can draw from it in the moments you need to. That allows you to be more innovative, more creative, more open, and I'd argue more human. But first, let's go back in time. Let's talk about when you and I were children, because for kids, so much of their life is about filling and reinforcing their well. You played for hours, you told stories, you listened to stories, you danced, you listened to music, you explored your bodies, you stared at everything and everyone until it was uncomfortable for all of us around. You let life be captivating. And all of that went in your well. You hang out with little kids, you're going to see them sparking all the time because little kids spark all the time. And if you're fortunate enough to hang out with little kids when they're getting new fodder in their well, you'll see it come up weeks or months later, and you're going to be totally fascinated with what they come up with. Little kids are sparking machines. But unfortunately, as little kids grow up, they spark less. And they spark less because as we grow up, we grow out of the feeling that life's captivating, that everything can be inspiring, and that every moment is a learning moment. For all intents and purposes, we've already learned. And that means we move into a mode of repetition. And that repetition allows us to secure a surefire success. And as life becomes less inspiring and we move to a life that's more of a series of tasks, you just have less and less fodder for your well. And eventually, folks forget they ever had a well in the first place or feel like they're not creative, or they say things like, I lost my creativity, like I lost my keys. You can't lose it. I'd just argue they let their well run dry. And for some folks, that's frankly okay. Might be sad for me to say, but it's okay because their lives are pretty repetitive and they've picked a life of defined success. They know exactly what they're doing one step before another. But for you and I, we decided that a job and a life of certainty and repetition was not for us. We decided to pursue the craft of product management, where hardly anyone in our families understands what we do for a living. And frankly, I don't blame them because at any given hour, my job might look wildly different. But I'd say, even in those wild differences, I'm always innovating, I'm always problem solving, and I'm always seeking that spark. And if that's what you're doing every day, which I know you are, you need a deep, vast well to get you through it. I'm a visual person. I like to visualize my well. And my well is a deep, profound system of inspirational waterways that lives somewhere around my heart. So you'll often hear me talk about it like this with my hands. And when I'm sparking, my hands and my mouth and my heart finds ways to pull things up in a bucket. And yes, it's a bucket. That's how I imagine it. And there's a lot in my bucket and there's a lot in my well, stuff you'd imagine, like business books and conferences, just like this one, but also a bunch of random stuff you might not imagine, like the dance show I went to last night, literally last night, the storytelling shows I go to, game nights, and a little show called Love is Blind. Have you heard of it? There's no special academic requirement for what enters my well. There's no expiration date for what goes into my well, and my well can never be too full. It is always vast. Now let's focus on why you're really here. I know it. How is Love is Blind in my creative well? If you don't know what Love is Blind is, it's a reality dating show on Netflix. And I think it's really great. For those of you from Netflix in the audience, I appreciate you. You have filled my well for weeks as my boyfriend and I watch every Sunday as our couples ritual. And then afterwards, we lay in bed dissecting everything that happened and maybe sheepishly admitting to each other that we might have read or heard spoilers on the internet. Like, spoiler alert, he knew that Deep D turned down Shake and sat quietly next to me on the sofa while I gasped in shock. Now, I don't know what my future holds, and if maybe it might be running a dating app, or maybe I'm going to have to figure out how people are going to fall in love in the metaverse, because that's going to happen, surely will. But even if it doesn't, I know that I got to watch Love is Blind and focus on how intensely people felt and reacted, and how real these emotions can feel, particularly with the structures that were made for them, right? These structures were made. So these structures were two pods with a speaker in the wall and some wine glasses that were gold in color. That environment created heightened feelings for these people. Watch one episode if everything I just said sounded like gibberish. I promise it will at least be fun. I have no clue if these folks will really fall in love or be married for the rest of their lives or simply become Instagram influencers, but as a maker of things for people, I couldn't help but watch, feeling enraptured by the scenarios and the structures which enabled and forced these conversations and experiences about something that people try to do every day: fall in love and stay in love. The discussions my boyfriend and I had post show as recaps on race, on community, on experience, on social gaming was just far beyond what you would imagine someone would talk about after watching a little dating show. I have yet to use my insights from dissecting this season of Love is Blind, but I surely know that I've put them in my well. And when that moment arrives where I need a spark to fly, I'll be prepared. That's the point. To be innovative, to be your very best problem solver, to be the very best human, you need to have full wells of creative musings which you can draw from. And in my well is every season of Love is Blind, the spoken word poetry show I went to, the Afrofuturist show I went to, the documentary on the Donut King of California, really fascinating if you haven't seen it. Too many news articles on pick your topic. I'm sure I've researched it. Every podcast episode I've ever listened to, a book on making habits stick, the weird date I went on with the post office inspector who told me all about the fraud that happens at the post office, surprisingly a lot. It was really fascinating. I'm not certain he was supposed to tell me, but now it's in my well. And my well and your well and their well will be fundamentally different. And that's the point. That's your edge. I started my career in the physical design world. I was a jeweler. I made furniture. I made lots of decorative objects. And I worked with prototypers and manufacturers all over the world before I started doing software. When I joined Capital One, I never could have imagined my training as a jeweler from 10 years earlier would have been useful. But there I stood manufacturing a new credit card, and having to explain to the entire executive team how die casting works and how we need to think about the weight and sound of metal to make a beautiful credit card. So beautiful, one might say, it might look like jewelry. That moment was made for me over the course of these years because I allowed myself to passionately study jewelry and metalsmithing, not knowing how it would reemerge in my life. And I'm often trying to explain a complicated concept at work about how an experience comes to life, or how data needs to move, or how we need to market a product. And I use an example, a metaphor, a story from something I've read. And while you can tell, I read a lot. And that moment from the comedic essay book or the exceptionally hard and gripping memoir makes the difference for my tech team when I explain it to them, or when I'm talking to executives and they can actually feel what I'm expressing. Feel, not hear, feel. That's my creative well in action. And again, no one else can meet that moment in the manner that I can. They can meet it from their perspective, from their well. But if that other person doesn't actively fill their well, or rather they don't even think they have a well or they need a well, or when granted the opportunity to be curious and open and intrigued by life, instead they sit back, they tune out, they surely are not prepared for this moment, and no spark will be had. So here's my pitch. In your life, in your career, you will be confronted with countless moments where one spark, one idea can change everything. You can hope to have a good idea when those moments come, or you can ask yourself if you're prepared right now, today, with a curious mind and heart and creative well. For me, I found that my creative well is a professional requirement. It is how I get to see the world with fresh eyes, with deep empathy, with the ability to argue multiple sides of an argument. And I love doing that. I love arguing all of the sides. It makes me professionally successful. As a product leader, me and my teams, we've made credit cards that look like jewelry, risk management tools that have better interfaces than consumer facing tools. That's right. A risk management tool that has a better interface than most consumer facing tools. I've made a website for senior citizens to learn how to bank digitally during the era of COVID in English and Spanish. We've made data protection tools that literally make sensitive data disappear. All of these things exist because someone sparked and then it snowballed. I remember a lot of these sparking moments. They're really fun. And I'll tell you a secret, I don't remember a lot of them because at my job at Capital One at the lab, we spark every day. And I'm sparking all the time. I spark with anyone that will listen to me, anyone I talk to. I like to treat my creative well the way I think of a Halloween house at Halloween season, the ones with the best candy, where they're just giving the candy out to anyone and everybody that comes by. Um, that's how I believe a well should be treated. My well's got to be deep and profound and rich and full, and that's good for me. But when your well is rich and deep and well funded and full, that's good for all of us. And that's how change happens. That's how you make everyone you know an innovator. That's how you make everyone you know creative. That's how you make everyone you know deeply empathetic and more connected. We want to live and work in sparking communities. And to make sparks common, we need to make refilling our wells very common. Every day, something's got to go in there, every single day. And push yourself to make your well look very reflective of you, but also push yourself to make your well into something that's beyond who you are today. Because inspirational fodder, creative fodder does not need to be something you love, does not need to be something you like. It simply needs to be something that allows you to think differently. When my friends ask me to see shows, movies, anything, I often say yes before I fully know what I'm getting myself into. Why? Because I'm human, because I know if I ask too many questions, I will decide if I like something before I even know if I understand it. And, life is often very curated and repetitive, and when you just see things and do things and talk to people you like, you will enjoy yourself. But will it be inspiring? And there's a lot of algorithms that govern our lives right now. They govern what TV shows we watch, what news we see, what people we engage with. And that's reinforcing enough. You want to make sure that your well is wide and large and not homogenous. You need counter arguments in there. You need the unexpected. You need the ugly things. You need the things that you would never pick in there. So if you're listening to this talk and you've never watched Love is Blind, I implore you to. Not because I think you're going to think it's great, although maybe you will. Maybe you'll think it's terrible, but maybe you will come to that moment with deep empathy. Maybe you will understand the humans watching that show. Maybe you will see something that sparks something. You will put a nugget in that creative well. You will come to that nugget with great intention, good intentions. And a few weeks from now, a year from now, a lifetime from now, maybe you'll be in need of a spark. And you too will think of Deep D and Shake and those damn gold wine glasses, and sparks will fly. We can only hope. Thank you.